The ancient Romans are considered, if not the most, one of the most influential empires to ever exist. The topic I want to discuss is how ancient Rome used art as a political propaganda, but more specifically about how art helped portray Augustus as a great emperor. Ancient Rome really brought out their politicians in a good light, with the art and writing in their society. Things like public speaking, monuments, and portraitures brought out all the highlights of a leader. I want to analyze two art pieces about Augustus that portray him as almost godly and one of the best men to live. The pieces I am analyzing today are the Altar of Augustan Peace and Augustus of Primaporta. But first, I want to talk about who Augustus was. The leader Augustus was the first official emperor. He ruled from 27 BC to 14 AD, which is 40 years. He was the first ruler to take Rome from a dictatorship into an empire by using the military as a show of power and implementing laws into society. His authority was inescapable. Augustus was influential. He was thought of highly by all of society. He was skilled in political manipulation and made himself look wonderful. Through public speeches and art, Augustus influenced the Romans into loving him and following his rules. I'm going to focus on how he used art as a vessel for his influence. Physical pieces of art were effective because it doesn't take any skill to see a great piece of art. It could be seen by anyone, and they could be influenced without needing to be literate, which most of the general public was not. Art is still influential today and is still used for political propaganda. The Romans were the first to figure out the art of propaganda and how to use art as propaganda. I'll be analyzing how the Altar of Augustan Peace and Augustan of Primaporta has acted as this. The first piece I want to analyze is the Altar of Augustan Peace, which is made from 13 to 9 BCE. This is an altar made after Augustus came back from his campaigns in Gaul and Spain, and it shows how the Romans mastered portraiture and sculpture during the time period. The altar has a social and religious use by being used for real sacrifices, but also just looks elegant in the community. Funded by Augustan himself, it shows messages all over about his authority and legitimacy. But its main message is how Augustan brought peace back into the empire after a long time of discontent within Rome, which really helped with his good propaganda. This is a monument using relief sculpture with scenes that depict real history along with scenes of mythology. Religious scenes can be seen on the north and south side of the altar, but the people on the sculpture are always facing towards the entrance as if they are ready to partake in the ritual themselves. Looking at the north side frieze, members of the imperial household and priests are shown. This includes the 7 men for sacrificial banquets. These men got together to make public feasts for sacred holidays. The south wall has Augustan shown with his immediate family, with everyone wearing appropriate sacrificial garments. On the inside of these two walls, there is a running frieze that shows vegetation that represents the abundance and fertility of the land, which was a huge win for the empire. Besides showing real scenes of the imperial family, there are 4 mythological panels. There is a scene of a bearded man making a sacrifice, a scene of a seated female goddess amid the fertility of Italy, a fragmentary scene with Romulus and Remus, who were the mythological leaders of Rome, who were also fed by the she-wolf. They're shown in the Lupercal Grotto, and a fragmentary panel showing Roma, which is the personification of Rome as a seated goddess. The most important piece of the monument is the altar. This was a functional piece where sacrifices were made, which helped Augustus look great since he was contributing to society by building public goods. The whole message of the altar is to show off Augustus's power, family, and idealize his ruling, but without the usual visual of war and battles. The monument served as a visual reminder of Augustus's success of bringing peace back to the empire. The mythological panels also point to him being from the gods, which contributed to his legitimacy as a ruler. Every art piece that was made in honor of him always had a visual reminder of how calm but mighty he was, which brings us to our second piece. Augustus of Primaporta, made in 20 BCE, is a statue that portrays how Augustus wanted to be seen, which is him as a true leader. It was made to commemorate his victory over the Parthian Empire, and he is wearing a military outfit so he can be shown as a great military leader. However, his expression is calm and collected. Violence is not the main element here. His main message is that he brings peace by being level-headed and wise. He's also shown in a contrapposto pose, which is a reference to the Greeks and mimicking their sculptures from the Golden Age. This references to the highest point in the Greeks' history and is now being reflected in Augustus. Various deities are shown on his breastplate, but in the center there are two figures, which is a Romanian and a Parthian. Again, this shows the victory Augustan had over the Parthian Empire. Sol and Calus are the sun and sky gods seen on the breastplate, which means the sun and sky in Rome will always be there, but of course Augustus is the one to thank for that. On the sides of his breastplate, there are female personifications of all the countries Augustus has conquered. Apollo and Diana are also shown, which is a reference to Roman religion, which is good propaganda for Augustus and shows that he is a religious man. Another important deity on the breastplate is Tellus, who is the Mother Earth goddess, which of course symbolizes the fertility of the Roman lands. Now moving on to his left leg, Cupid is shown riding a dolphin. The dolphin is a symbol of a naval victory over Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, which then made Augustus the only ruler over all of Rome. Cupid is a reference to Venus, since Cupid is her son. Augustus's adoptive father, Julius Caesar, claimed he descended from Venus, which in turn made Augustus have a connection to the gods as well. This portraiture is not just a portrayal of his strength and wisdom, but of him also as a demigod who brings peace to Rome. It was one of the most influential pieces of the time, since it showed that even if the gods are on Augustus's side, who would want to challenge him in any way? It furthered his image as a good leader. To wrap it all up, Augustus was a good ruler who made himself look like he came from the gods. The altar was a symbol of peace he brought to Rome, but also acted as a public good for sacrifices. This persuaded the people into thinking he was a man who brought peace, a man who would pay for public goods, and a man who would take care of them when they needed him. The second piece was a portraiture with many symbolic and religious meanings as well. He had a look of calmness that expressed he was level-headed and the right man to rule Rome. The art everywhere in the empire made Rome believe in him. His political propaganda went further than art, but I'd argue that the art pieces were the most influential, since it was everywhere in the empire and everyone who saw them could translate the meaning right then and there. Art is more powerful than we may even realize.